Hello everyone, welcome back to another Star Wars Destiny video. Today there were a bunch of spoilers released for Way of the Force. These spoilers come from Fantasy Flight directly as well as the Double Blanks podcast. There'll be links in the description below where you can check them out and check out the article. Just going to bring up the cards here, going to let you know what I think of them. We got some really interesting stuff today from them, so let's go ahead and look at our first card. First up, I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly. We have Arahinda Pryce, Governor Pryce. Arahinda Pryce, Unscrupulous Governor, 10 health, 10 or 13 points, depending if you want to run a single die or run her at Elite. Again, we have that 1-to-1 ratio with their health to point cost. There's a lot of cards in Way of the Force that are doing that, which I think is really cool. Look at her sides here. So she has 2 melee, discard, resource, 2 specials, and a blank. She's a leader character, so if that subtype gets used in this set or future sets, she'll trigger off of that. Special, turn another one of your dice to any side. If you control the battlefield, you may resolve that die, increasing its value by 1. So this gives villain, or red villain, special training abilities. So if you were to resolve her special, you can then chain into another special. So let's say you resolve her special, flip into another special, you're able to then resolve that special as well. And I also like the bit with the battlefield. So if you control the battlefield, you can increase whatever die you flip to by 1. Let's say your opponent has a character that has 2 health left, and you have a die on a blank, and it has 1 range on it. And let's say you control the battlefield, so use her special, turn that die from its blank to its 1 range side, and then since you control the battlefield, you resolve that die as 2 range. So I think her special is really flexible depending on what you want to try to do with her. I like that she has a damage size. She's got that 2 melee, and then she can discard resources, and then you have 2 specials on her as well. I think points are pretty good, so 10, 13. She has 10 health. I think she's going to be really interesting and really fun to play. So that is Governor Pryce. We're going to take a look at our next card. And next up, we have Art of War, Red Villain event, 2 resources. Spot a red character to reveal an opponent's hand. For each card just revealed, remove a die showing a value that is equal to that card's cost. Now, you may want to play this card when your opponent is rolled out and you haven't rolled yet, because I'm not sure, there probably had to be a clarification on this, but it just says, for each card revealed, remove a die showing a value equal to the card's cost. So let's say I look at a hand, there's a 3 cost, a 2 cost, and a 1 cost. Let's say my opponent has a die showing a 1, a die showing a 2, and I have a die showing a 3. I can remove their 1 cost, their 1 die with a 1. I can remove the other die that has a 2, and then I may be forced to even remove my own die. Again, I think there's going to have to be a clarification on this one, but it could be a little bit risky if you were both rolled out, and then you have to actually remove your own dice if you can't remove your opponents, let's say. So maybe do this once your opponents are all once your opponents are rolled in. Let's say you've resolved a bunch of stuff, or your stuff has been mitigated. They roll in, you play this, and remove a bunch of their dice. Really cool, artwork on it with Thrawn. This will also work very well with Thrawn. So let's say you play this first, you see their hand, you then take a mental note of all the cards' costs, and then when you activate Thrawn, you'll know what number to call to get rid of whatever their biggest threat in their hand is. I also like that it gives you hand knowledge even if you're not using Thrawn. So you basically just pay 2, have to have a red character, and then you get to see what they have. Thrawn gets that ability on his activation, so he can activate, claim a number, and then look at the hand and discard a card of that value. But this just, I think, synergizes really well with Thrawn. I think it's a really, really strong card, a really good way to remove dice, especially if you have dice of different values. Let's say they have like I said, a 1, a 2, a 3, and maybe even like a 4. And you look at their hand, if they have cards of those numbers, those dice will be getting removed. So that is Art of War. We're going to move into our next card. Next up, we have Testing Procedure, Red Villain Event, 0 resources. Activate up to 2 of your supports, then if any of those support dice just roll damage, either range, melee, or indirect, gain a resource. So if you're playing like a villain vehicle deck, you're probably going to have at least one of your vehicles potentially roll damage. So you play this, you activate two of your supports, so it speeds up the round that you're in by letting you activate two supports at once. Then, if you roll damage, you get a resource. Also really like this in conjunction with something that will let you take another action after it. So, let's say you play Tactical Mastery, you spot your red character. As your first action, you play Testing Procedure, roll in two vehicles or two supports. If any of them roll damage, you gain a resource. And then with the other action, you can then go ahead and potentially resolve dice as well. Especially if you gain a resource. So let's say you rolled out a couple supports. Let's say it's all range damage, for example. Let's say you have a die with regular range damage and then a die with a resource cost inside. So again, let's say you rolled out range damage with both supports. You gain the resource. You can then immediately, if you played with Tactical Mastery or some other way to get more actions, you can then spend the resource you got with Testing Procedure to resolve the resource costed die. So I think this card could be really, really good, especially in villain vehicles. You get to bring in two of them at once, which will definitely speed up your actions for the round because you're not having to take 2 turns to activate two different supports. You activate them both, potentially get a resource, and then if you couple it with something that lets you take more actions, you can then potentially resolve those support dice as well. And we have a big support coming up, which I think this card will go perfectly with. And we'll be that's going to be it for Testing Procedure. We're going to move into our next card. And next up, we have Planetary Bombardment. Red villain support, 6 resources, 4 indirect damage, 5 indirect damage, 6 indirect damage for a resource, 7 indirect damage for a resource, and 4 disrupt. Has ambush, and after you play this support, you may deal indirect damage to an opponent equal to the number of vehicles you spot. So if you have this in a vehicles deck and you have a couple vehicles out, let's say you have 2 vehicles already in play, when you play this, you deal 2 indirect damage right away. It may do no damage, like let's say you have no vehicles out, you still get this out, this really strong support with just huge damage sides, and it also has ambush. And again, 6 resources, fairly expensive, but there are ways to get it out for less. You can play it with something like Imperial backing, so if you're playing like a deck with like a ton of characters, you can get this out for less. You could play red and yellow and use something like Delve. So Delve, 3 resources. I think it's a villain yellow event. 3 resources. Deal one indirect damage to yourself to play a vehicle or support from your hand for free. So you can get this out for free at the cost of 3 resources and a damage. General Hux, you can get it out with him. So let's say you roll into a special, you do Imperial backing for free. Let's say you have Hux and 2 other characters. You get it out for free. Free Imperial backing, and then you reduce the cost of this even more. So you can get this out for pretty cheap if you have it in the right deck. And then, again, just massive damage sides here. So we're looking at 6 and 7 indirect possibly. Possibly more if you use Governor Pryce to flip this into the 7 indirect side. So let's say you have a resource, you use her special, flip it to 7 indirect, pay the resource, and then if you control the battlefield, she'll increase this value by 1, making that 8 indirect. So could potentially be 5, 6, 7, or 8 indirect damage if you control the battlefield and you use General or Governor Pryce's special to get into this. I like that they didn't make this a vehicle just because I think it would get abused if you were using stuff that would ready vehicles. Because it's supposed to resemble multiple, basically just Star Destroyers bombing a planet. So, really interesting card. I want to try to build this into a deck just because I love potential damage output out of this. Being able to use Governor Pryce to increase the value, or let's say Tactical Mastery. Let's say you do Testing Procedure. This is a perfect card for Testing Procedure. So you roll this out with something else, and then potentially get to resolve it. So you activate this. If you Tactical Mastery into it, you can Tactical Mastery, play Testing Procedure, roll in some supports. If it rolls damage, you get a resource. You can then use the resource to pay the resource costed sides on this die as well. So that is Planetary Bombardment. I think it's a really exciting card. We're going to move into our next card. And into some of our hero cards, we have Ezra Bridger, Aspiring Jedi, so blue Ezra card here. 8 health, 8-11 for either a single die or elite, again with that 1-to-1 ratio on the health and cost. 1 melee damage, 2 melee damage, disrupt, discard, resource, and blank. He's a Spectre, so they use a Spectre subtype from Rebels. This will trigger, that'll trigger him. I like that they're going very specific with these subtypes. So we have Troopers, Spectres, and we have Gungans and a whole bunch of other stuff. Anyway, he has a power action. Power action, if this character has 1 or more upgrades, draw a card, or 2 cards if he has 3 or more upgrades. So if you have Ezra completely loaded up, you can power action to draw 2 cards. I'm not sure if you would want to completely have him loaded up with 3 resources or 3 upgrades. But if you have an upgrade on him, you can power action to draw a card, which is pretty cool. So 8-11, I like that they love that we have now a blue Ezra with basically just melee damage side. Still has disrupt. Can discard, has resources, and that is again the 1-to-1 ratio of health and points. So he is 8, 4, and 8-11. We're gonna move into our next card. And next up we have Loft Wolf Bond. 1 resource, blue hero event. Give up to 2 of your blue characters 1 shield each. You may activate those characters in the order of your choice. So for 1 resource, you're getting 2 total shields, 1 shield on 2 different characters, so like 1 on one, 1 on the other, and you then get to activate those characters. So it gives you shield, and then also for basically 1 action, you get shields and you get to activate 2 characters. That's pretty cool. So you get your characters protected, and then you can potentially get both of your characters rolled out with 1 action, and this will of course speed up your round a little bit. So you're basically just doing 1 action to get out both of your characters instead of taking 2 actions or 2 turns to roll in one and then roll in the other. And I like that it only costs 1. You basically get to roll them both out and get shields. Really cool card. So that is the Loft Wolf Bond. We're going to move into our next card. And next up, we have Ezra Bridger's Lightsaber. 2 resources for a weapon upgrade. Legendary. 1 range damage, 2 melee damage, shield, resource, special, and blank. It has redeploy and special. Deal 2 damage to an opponent's character. If this upgrade is on Ezra Bridger, force that opponent to lose 1 resource. I think this card is really good. So first of all, it's only 2 resources. 2 resources for a redeployable weapon with 3 damage sides. So we have the range, the melee, and then the special. And then the special does more if it's on Ezra. So with this set, they're doing stuff with upgrades and events that if you have a specific character, you get a little more out of it. So with this, if it's on Ezra, you can basically the special becomes 2 damage with a disrupt. So they lose a resource and take 2 damage. Has redeploy, which is great. And I think this is just really cool. So you get those 3 damage sides, you get shields, you get resources out of it. I think this is going to fit well in a lot of blue decks. I don't think it's going to replace like Ancient Lightsaber or anything like that. But I think I can see people running this in conjunction with Ancient Lightsaber, just because in blue you can do the special training. So basically, you do a bunch of special training into this, you then deal 2 damage and possibly disrupt. So that is Ezra Bridger's Lightsaber. Oh, I also like that if you're using the older Ezra from Empire at War, this can go on him as well, as long as you have another blue character in your team. So if you have Kanan and Empire at War Ezra can have this blue upgrade on him because he ignores those restrictions. So that is Ezra Bridger's Lightsaber. We're going to move into our next card. And next up, we have Hone Skills. 0 resource, neutral blue support. Each of your characters can have 1 additional upgrade. This could be pretty interesting. So pay 0, your characters can have up to 4 upgrades. Or if you play another copy of Hone Skills, each of your characters can have potentially have 5 upgrades. I don't know if you would ever have that many upgrades on a character. I think if you just stack the character up with either 4 or 5 upgrades, that character is going to just get focus fired and get defeated really quickly. Unless you're running a lot of redeploy weapons, or you're also maybe running the built to last plot, which gives your unique blue upgrades redeploy. But it could be an interesting way to basically just get a bunch of upgrades on a character, potentially roll out and do a ton of damage with those upgrades, and potentially the character dice as well. So not much to say about that, but I do like that you can have two of these out and they stack, making it possible to have up to 5 upgrades on a character. So if you have one out, you can have 4. If you have two of these out, your characters can have 5 upgrades. Might work well because you have some upgrades that don't have dice, so you can basically use a slot for that, and then have 3 or 4 dice upgrades on that character as well. Again, like I said, I think if you have that many upgrades on a character, they are just going to immediately get focused and get defeated. But that's to be seen, I guess. So that is Hone Skills. This does it for the Fantasy Flight official spoilers. We're now going to move into the yellow spoilers that were shown off by Double Blanks Gaming. Again, there'll be links in the description below to check out the Fantasy Flight article as well as the Double Blanks channel as well. So we'll be right back with the yellow spoilers. And next up, we have Cassian Andor, Rebel Operative. I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about Cassian because he was kind of partially spoiled in, I think it was a Game Train magazine article, maybe about a month and a half ago. Anyway, so 10 health for a 10-14. Again, we get that 1-to-1 ratio. 1 range damage, 2 range damage, discard, discard, resource blank. He's a leader, so he'll trigger off of that subtype if cards ever use it. And after you resolve this die, you may deal 1 indirect damage to an opponent or discard the top card of a deck. So depending on what you want to do with him, you can use him to do damage, or you can also use him to discard as well. So he has the 2 discard sides. He has an ability after the die gets resolved, he can cause the opponents to discard. So I think putting Cassian in a mill deck might work out very well. Especially, let's say you paired him up Elite Cassian and 2 Jedha Partisans. So you roll in Cassian, you resolve his die for whatever, for discard, damage, or resources. You then choose to do the one indirect damage, which would then trigger the Jedha Partisans to trigger their ability as well, which is they discard a card once indirect damage for the first time each round gets resolved. So Cassian pairs up really well with them. You can even do single Cassian and 2 Partisans. So you're looking at let's see, 16. You're looking at 26 points. If they have a 4-point yellow plot, that might work as well. Looking forward to Cassian. The only thing that was new today with this card is that we now know that it is a legendary. So I believe the card was kind of obscured in the article, and we didn't see what the rarity was, but now we know it is legendary. So that is Cassian Andor. We're going to move into our next card. And next up, we have Clandestine Operation. Clandestine, however you want to pronounce it. So 1 resource, yellow hero event. Spot 2 yellow characters or Cassian Andor. Resolve any number of your dice showing the same symbol. Then discard cards from the top of the deck equal to the number of dice you just resolved. So, again, looks like they're really trying to focus Cassian into mill, which I think is really cool. So this card, again, you either spot 2 or you can spot Cassian. So let's say you have 2 Jedha Partisans and Cassian. Let's say you have 2 of these in your deck. You spot Cassian the first time you play it, and you resolve the dice and discard cards. Let's say Cassian gets defeated and you still have the 2 Partisans out. You can then spot them to play the event as well. But I think this is going to be, let's say you roll in 3 dice that have discard on them for some reason, or indirect damage or whatever. You pay the 1 resource, you play this card, you then resolve those dice. Let's say it was 3 dice with, or let's say 2 dice with discard. You discard 2 cards from their hand, and then you will then mill 2 cards off the top of the deck with this card. If you do it with indirect damage, let's say you have a couple dice showing indirect, you deal the indirect damage. The Jedha Partisans then trigger to do to mill, and then you mill here as well. So 2 Partisans, they'll discard 2. So let's say you do 2 dice with indirect damage. You do that damage. You then trigger the Partisans, discard 2 cards with the Partisans, and then since you resolve 2 dice with indirect damage, you then mill 2 more cards. I can see this card being just insane in mill, especially if you're rolling a lot of card or dice that have the same symbols. This will allow you to resolve as many of those dice as you want with that same symbol, and then discard cards from a deck equal to the number of dice that got resolved. So I can see this card being really good in Hero Mill. We're going to move into our or that does it for a clandestine operation. We're going to move into our next card. And final card for today's video is Stealthy. 2 resources, Hero Yellow upgrade, legendary, ability upgrade by the way. 2 indirect damage, 2 shields, resource, 2 specials in the blank. The attached character has the trooper subtype, so if you have a bunch of troopers, basically this will turn a non-trooper into a trooper for the sake of, let's say, they make a card that says deal 1 indirect damage to an opponent based on the number of troopers you have. If you play this on a character that isn't a trooper, they become a trooper, and then anything that triggers off of the trooper subtype will then be, or well, it'll trigger more times basically. Special: discard cards from the top of a deck equal to the value showing on one of your character dice. So let's say you roll this out with a character, they do let's say they have 2 melee damage. You resolve the special on this. You then discard 2 cards. One thing, the special though, it kind of does slow down your resolution on your dice. So you are leaving that original character die in the pool longer than you might want to. So let's say, it's 2 melee. I roll 2 melee and this, and I go to resolve this. I'll discard 2 cards, and then it'll go to my opponent's turn. They then get the opportunity to possibly mitigate the damage die, or potentially mitigate this die. So let's say I roll it out, then they mitigate it. So you are leaving that die that you are using for this ability out in the pool for a whole nother turn, basically, which will give your opponents potentially more chances to mitigate it. But I can see this going really well in mill. So we have indirect damage, so it works as a partisan. So if you trigger the indirect damage off of this, their mill ability will go off, and then the special also just discards cards as well. So could be really good. I also like that it costs 2, and on top of that, the character that is on becomes a trooper character as well. So that is Stealthy. These 3 yellow spoilers came from Double Blanks Gaming. There'll be, again, links in the description to check out them, as well as the Fantasy Flight article. That's going to do it for this video, so definitely a good day for spoilers. We got some really cool stuff in Villain Red, some cool stuff in Hero Yellow, and Hero Yellow. We'll be back when Fantasy Flight releases more spoilers or more cards get spoiled. Until next time, I want to thank you again for watching. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.